Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I will be your instructor. Today I'd like to go through the progress I am making on a major piece of homebrew called the CADET system. CADET stands for Combat, Advanced, Dynamic, Exciting and Tactical, and it is a major rebuilding of the way that melee combat and range combat, I guess, works in Dungeons and Dragons in order to make it more exciting and more fun. I've talked about this in previous videos. I've talked about some of the frustrations I have with combat and martial characters in Dungeons and Dragons, and I've mentioned many of the ideas in prototype form. But I've made a lot of progress and I'd like to give an update on what I am doing. This is going to be a very detail-oriented video, so there's going to be quite a lot of content and a lot of it is still going to be subject to change, but this is just a status update on where I am. Okay, what are the key pillars of the cadet system? Well, the first is what I call a distress rule for encouraging dynamic combat. This is a set of 3 statuses that all creatures, both PCs and NPCs, can have: clear, cautious, and confounded. I've talked about this in a previous video, but the very short version is every time something is hit and takes damage, it changes its status 1 step towards confounded. So it starts at clear, the next step is cautious, then confounded. Any creature that has a clear status gets advantage on their first attack in their turn. Nice and easy. Any creature that is confounded gets disadvantage on their first attack each turn, and any attack made against them, the first attack gets advantage. There are other rules as well, such that affects reaction attacks. If you make a creature cautious, it will get disadvantage on its reaction attack against you. If you make a creature confounded, it may not make a reaction attack against you. This is to allow characters to move around the battlefield more fluidly. You can attack someone, hit them, and then have a better chance of just stepping back and moving into a different target. That's the distress rule. The next pillar of the cadet system is going to be increasing the number of attacks that all characters can make, whether they're specialist martial characters or not. My idea at the moment is that every class starts with 2 attacks. In addition to that, every class that doesn't get an extra attack at level 11 now gets one. So even something like a pure sorcerer or wizard class will start with 2 attacks and get extra attack at level 11 to have 3. Any class or subclass that gets extra attack at around 5 or 6 still gets it, and the fighter will get a further extra attack at level 17. I also want to remove or reduce the penalty for multi-classing, so you can have extra attack from up to, I'm going to say up to 3 different sources, and the level 11 and level 17 for fighters attack is additional attack. So you can have extra attack from 3 martial sources. You could be Paladin 5, Barbarian 5, Fighter 5 and get 3 additional attacks. Or you can go pure fighter and get 3 additional attacks just by being a fighter. This does require a complete rebuild of the fighter class. I've talked in a previous video about how I would handle Action Surge for it to be a class action that you can use every turn that gets more powerful as you level up. So this will still make the fighter special. All martial classes are now going to get multiple attacks. Actually, maybe I'll limit it extra attack to 2 different sources, so that will be a total of 4 attacks. Yeah, that sounds good to me. So all martial classes can get multiple attacks. The fighter will get the most because of Action Surge, which is something they can use every turn. Ultimately, I would like to rebuild all of the classes to have this class action feature, something that's unique and scales with their classes they level up in that class. I've talked about this in previous videos, But for now, I'm just doing the fighter because this is the one that will interact with these cadet rules in the most significant way. One thing I'm trying to do is get rid of bonus actions. So my idea is that bonus actions are something that is built into a class, and you have your class action that makes use of your bonus action. So when you do a class action, it's I'm going to cast some spells and do something extra, or I'm going to make some attacks and do something extra. So any feature that gives you a bonus action attack will be rewritten somehow. And bonus action spells, I'm going to change the way they work. I'm going to call them minor spells. We'll get to that in a minute. But overall, there's going to be a reduction or close to elimination of bonus actions as best I can do. The next pillar of the cadet system is rebuilding weapon masteries. I've talked about this in other videos as well. I think this is a great step forward, but I don't think it went far enough. Weapon masteries are now features that you learn, and you pick the weapon masteries and then you can use them on the appropriate weapons. This ties in with a combo mechanic that encourages you to use many different weapon masteries per turn by giving you a damage bonus if you can chain together a combo. And I mentioned this, there's also going to be a rebuilt rule for casting spells in combat. Moving on with a little bit more detail onto the masteries, which is what I want to focus on in this video. There are 3 kinds of masteries: simple, advanced, and expert. Expert masteries are tied to either a feat or possibly some class feature, so you have to commit to learning them. Other than that, every character is going to start off with learning 4 weapon masteries. And so you learn the mastery, not the weapon. So if a weapon has the let's pick one out by name. I'm drawing a blank here. If it has the shatter weapon mastery, you learn shatter. You don't learn, oh, this is a weapon mastery for this weapon. So you just learn it by the mastery, and any weapon that has the shatter mastery attached to it, you can then use that mastery. So you start with 4. If you are in a martial class, you can pick advanced or simple masteries. If you're in a non-martial class, you can only pick simple ones. There'll be a table that says what's what. There are sort of semi-martial classes, and I'll have to break that down by subclasses. So, for example, warlocks will probably only get simple ones, but hexblade can do simple and advanced. Wizards can only do simple, but blade singers will get access to advanced. Every time you get extra attack, you learn 2 new weapon masteries. And if that class or subclass is martial, it can be advanced or simple masteries. But if it's a non-martial class, it can only be simple masteries. That's that. So you start with 4, you learn 2 more every time you get extra attack. You can normally only use 1 weapon mastery per attack. Now, there are some that trigger when you actually hit. There are some that trigger if you miss, and there are some that just trigger for any attack. But you can normally use 1 weapon mastery per attack. But there are certain features that will change that. If you score a critical hit, you can use 2 weapon masteries on that attack. This makes criticals better because it's not just here's a bit of extra damage, it's you do a bit of extra damage and you can do an extra thing as well. If you've used 3 weapon masteries in a turn, your next attack gets to use an additional weapon mastery. So you're sort of building up the combo as you go along. And ultimately, I'd like some class actions to allow people to use extra weapon masteries. A great example would be a ranger's hunter's mark. You pick out a target, mark it for hunting, and then everyone that attacks that target can use an additional weapon mastery on their first attack. Or perhaps a bard's Song of Battle class action. Eventually, when I get around to doing something like this, that will give a buff to people that might allow them to use an additional weapon mastery at some point in their turn. Either way, your target is to use 6 different weapon masteries in a turn. This is quite a tall order, but maybe not for the martial classes. If they're attacking with up to 4 attacks and they have certain abilities that let them use multiple masteries per attack, using 6 in a turn is very doable. And every time you use 6 in a turn, you get a combo point. And a combo point is simply an extra d6 damage to every attack you make, every martial attack. So it wouldn't affect spells, but it would affect ranged combat, thrown weapons, and melee attacks. And the maximum bonus you can get for this is your proficiency bonus. Now, it might be very hard, you think, to get 6 weapon masteries. Remember, if you get lucky with a crit, that's using 2 weapon masteries in a turn on an attack. And there are some weapon masteries that trigger if you miss. So if you have a good selection, missing an attack isn't a problem because you can just use one of the ones that comes with a miss. In addition, it will make people think about using different weapons. You're swinging a greatsword, that's absolutely fantastic, but there's only a certain number of weapon masteries attached to a greatsword. And once you've used them all, if you haven't got to 6, maybe you want your next attack to be a kick, because unarmed attacks can use different weapon masteries. So by encouraging players to vary the attacks they do, it's going to make combat a lot more tactical and a lot more dynamic. What did I make note of next? Fighters will also get an extra ability at some point. There are some masteries that you can only use once per turn, and expert masteries, you can only use 1 expert mastery per action. I've got to start saying per action rather than per turn, because this will interact with the way action surge works. You've got action surge, you do 2 actions, all those things you can only do once, now you can do twice. But I made this. This is your combo tracker. I hope this is not mirrored in the actual video because, well, you can see, you just, when you play a combat mastery card, you put it down in this. If you only used 0 or 1 combat masteries, you lose a point of combo to a minimum of 0, that's fine. But once you've played your second mastery, that -1 combo disappears, you don't have to worry about that. Once you play your third weapon mastery card, you get +1 mastery. So your next attack might fill in 4 and 5. And then once you get here and fill this one in, you get +1 combo. You have a tracker here, you move your tracker along, plus d6, plus 2d6, plus 3d6. This is your combo bonus. So that's something that the players will have, and whatever I end up making, hopefully I'll have access to some sort of professional graphical designer who is not me, because as you can tell, not my strong point, will make a beautiful one of these. If this was a product that I was selling, I could make it a nice double layer cardboard thing, and you can put the cards in, and there'd be little finger scoops so you can get them out, and there'd be a nice little marker showing where your combo thing is there. That's fantastic. Non-martial characters might not interact with this very much, but they could. That's the thing. Even a regular wizard, when they get up to their third attack at level 11, and maybe they have something that lets them get an extra attack, either through a feat or through dual wielding, or something like that, it's entirely possible they could get 4 attacks in a turn. And with a crit or a class feature from someone else that gives them an extra mastery, it's entirely possible they can get 6 masteries in a turn. Now, for martial characters who have a feat that gives them a potential extra attack during the turn, something like Polearm Master, Great Weapon Master, Shield Master is going to give them an extra bash attack. Getting to 4 or 5 attacks is going to be quite easy. And if you've got 5 attacks, remember that you get +1 mastery automatically. There are some masteries that you can use even if you miss. So it shouldn't be too difficult, with careful planning of your masteries, to get 6 per turn. And therefore you can start to build up your combo counter. If you miss too many times, there's a problem. Okay, I need to mention this. Each combat mastery can only be put down once. So you need to use 6 different ones. So if you've only got one that triggers on a miss and you miss twice, that's really going to hamper this. So you're not going to be increasing your combo counter automatically every turn. There is required some planning and a bit of luck, but it's there. It's something to aim for. And when that combo counter starts filling up, your melee attacks are going to be absolutely devastating. You're going to be able to put more damage down than dedicated casters. And here's the thing, your attacks get more powerful as the combat goes on. Whereas spellcasters tend to use their big spells first, and they tend to get weaker as the fight goes on. So there's going to be this very interesting balance dynamic about changing who's going to be in the lead and who's going to be more powerful in a fight. If you're your fighters, your barbarians, your paladins, they can start powering up their combo, they're going to be absolutely devastating. And none will be as dangerous as the fighter. The way I want Action Surge to work is you get 2 actions. And this is tracked per action, not per turn. So there is potential for a fighter to fill this up twice in their turn. That's going to be interesting. Okay, but what about the weapon masteries? I have written 35 weapon masteries. They are 6 expert masteries, 14 simple and 15 advanced. I haven't got round to allocating them to weapons yet, and I think there are quite a few missing weapons in the list that I'd like to fill gaps in. So my next task is to make an expanded weapon list. Maybe I want to add in some additional features for weapons as well. But then the main thing for the weapons is which masteries they allocate. So what differentiates weapons is not primarily their damage dice anymore. It's going to be which weapon masteries they interact with. And things like Polar Master and Great Weapon Master, their main effect now is to add an expert weapon mastery. So this is all going to be a very nice, neatly tied up system. When I was developing these weapon masteries, I had several priorities. I wanted them to be mostly immediate effect, so that there's not additional bookkeeping and tracking going on. Most of these weapon masteries have an effect that is immediate. A few of them have an effect which is just on the next attack you make. And a few of them have an ongoing effect, so they might affect the next attack that's made against you or the next save that the target creature has to make. So I'm hoping that there isn't much need for additional tokens and bookkeeping. That was something I was trying to push against. In addition to that, I've tried to make them interact with existing rules as much as possible so that it doesn't feel like an external thing that's just bolted onto the side. A well-designed rule feels part of a whole complete system rather than something that's just removable off the side. So where possible, I've tried to fill them in. Okay, let's start with the expert weapon masteries. The first one is Nick. Now, I'm going to say that I want to change the way that dual wielding works so that there's no bonus action attack. If you have a weapon in each hand, a light weapon in each hand, you get to make an additional attack in your turn with the offhand weapon, but it counts as a quick attack. A quick attack, you don't get to add your ability score modifier to the damage unless it's negative. So this is much the same as how dual wielding works at the moment with slightly weaker attacks for your offhand. But instead of being a bonus action, it is now incorporated into your main attack. The Nick weapon mastery comes with the dual wielder feat, and that allows you to make an additional attack. Not a quick attack, a full additional attack with your additional weapon. This means that if you're dual wielding and you have the dual wielder feat, you now get to make 2 additional attacks in your turn. So that's the Nick. Bash is something that comes with a shield master feat, and it allows you to make a bash attack with your shield as an additional attack. So in previous editions, this would say a bonus action attack. This is now just an additional attack. It counts as an improvised bludgeoning attack, so D6 bludgeoning damage, but it's an extra attack and you can put weapon masteries onto it. The thwack weapon mastery comes from the polearm master feat, and it allows you to make a quick attack with the buttstock of the weapon. So instead of doing D4 damage, it's a quick attack. So you use the regular weapon damage dice, but you don't add your ability score modifier to it, and the damage type counts as bludgeoning. Again, not a bonus action attack. This is now just an extra attack that you make immediately. So you've got to make it on the target or something within your reach or within 5 feet of the target. And then there's the cleave weapon masteries. The cleave weapon mastery comes with Great Weapon Master, and it replaces the bonus action attack you get for either critting or killing a foe. So if you score a crit or you kill your enemy, you get an extra attack. And finally, there's 2 more. There's the double load weapon mastery. This is for ranged attacks or thrown weapons, where you either double load or throw 2 of them, and it allows you to replace 1 regular attack with 2 quick attacks. Finally, there's the smash weapon mastery. This is for improvised weapons, and it comes with the tavern brawler feat. It allows you to destroy the weapon that you're using, smash it, and the hit counts as a crit. So it's an automatic crit, that makes it very powerful, but it is with an improvised weapon, so you don't have all these additional bonuses attached to it. And that is your list of expert feats. Now, you can only use 1 expert feat per action, and they all, apart from Smash, they all give you a way to get 1 extra attack. So remember, if you're dual wielding, you get an extra attack anyway. And if you've got the nick property, you get to make 2 extra attacks per turn. All the other ones replace a bonus action attack that came with a feat somehow. So those are the expert ones. The advanced ones, I'll go through these quite quickly. There is Fend, where you change the distressed status of an ally 1 step better. So you're fending off an enemy to give them some protection. So if you had an ally that was confounded, they become cautious, and if they were cautious, they become clear. This helps a friend out. On the other hand, you've got harass, which changes the status of one enemy within 5 feet of yourself or your target 1 step further away. So perhaps you hit one target and harass a second, so they both go from clear to cautious. There's the topple feat, topple mastery, which means you try to knock something down. There's the vex mastery, which allows you to make an immediate 5-foot move that doesn't trigger opportunity attacks and doesn't cost any of your speed. So you're vexing your opponent by stepping away from them, basically. There's the shatter ability, which can destroy a target's shield. That can only be used successfully once per turn, and if they're carrying a shield, they no longer get the benefit of it. So it's not universally useful, but taking away 2 points of AC from someone is always nice. The disarm feat. Given that changing and picking up weapons is pretty much a free action, the disarm weapon mastery ability, I keep saying feat, the disarm weapon mastery ability allows you to disarm an enemy and they lose an attack. So if they only had 1 attack per turn, it means they lose their attack picking it up. If they had multi-attack, they lose an attack as they have to pick up their weapon. Obviously, if they're not carrying a weapon, you can't use it. That's up to the DM. But given that you're also changing their status from perhaps clear to cautious or cautious to confounded, what you might be doing is not only removing one of their attacks, but giving them disadvantage on the second attack that they would make. There's the probe ability, the probe mastery. Pick a single damage type that your attack uses. If the target is immune to it, it becomes resistant, and if it's resistant, it loses that. It affects that attack only. So essentially, you're probing for weakness, and if you've got a target that's a really tough nut to crack, then you can only use probe once per turn, but it means that you can still put a little bit of damage on it just by looking for weak spots. Transfix can only be used successfully once. There's a save against this, but you try to pin them in place with your weapon. And if you do that, if you successfully transfix someone, you cannot move or make any more attacks with that weapon this turn, but the target is restrained, and the target has to give up attacks to try and break from the restraint. So this is a great one for setting up combos with your teammates. Charge gives you additional weapon damage if you've moved before your attack. Riposte gives you reaction counterattack. Dazzle gives your target a penalty on their next saving throw. Ricochet, your attack ignores cover but counts as a quick attack. And you can use this to convert a miss to a hit. So you make a ranged attack and it misses. You go, okay, I'll use Ricochet. They no longer benefit from cover. Does it count as a hit now? Yes. Okay, but it's only a quick attack, so you don't add your ability damage modifier to it unless it's negative. The adaptable mastery allows you to change damage between bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. And I talked about this in a previous video. I think monsters should have more vulnerability, immunity, diversity with these. So that's something for another day. That could be useful at some point. It also may change the way that other feats interact. So you've got the Crusher feat, but you've got a weapon that isn't bludgeoning damage. You could use the adaptable feat to make the damage go from slashing to bludgeoning and then trigger the Crusher feat's ability with it. Opportunistic, that draws an additional battlefield event card. That's something I didn't mention earlier. That's another pillar of Cadet. Random event battlefield card. So each player gets one per turn. And it could be there's an improvised weapon you can pick up and smack someone on the head for a free attack, or there's a patch of something on the ground that might give them elemental damage or make them prone to fall over or slide. So just random events to add a bit of diversification. But the opportunistic weapon mastery allows you to draw an extra one and then see what happens. Coup de grace. If your attack roll is made at advantage, re-roll one of the dice. This almost replicates the Elven Accuracy feat, and it certainly would stack with the Elven Accuracy feat. But it does mean that if you have advantage on attack, you're more likely to get that lucky critical. Moving on, the simple weapon masteries, there are Graze, which means you do a little bit of damage even if you miss. Push, you push your target, that's nice and easy. Slow, you slow your target down, reduce its speed for the next turn. Mighty Blow means you get to add your strength modifier to the damage of the attack, potentially again if you're already adding it. So it just makes the attack a little bit more powerful. There are not many of these weapon masteries that add more damage, so there are a few in there. Lucky, you can play this after a miss and add D4 to the hit roll, and it might turn a miss into a hit. You only get to use it successfully once. So you can only convert one miss to a hit per turn, but you can use it every time you miss until it turns a miss into a hit. Flashy, damage an enemy within 5 feet of your target with an amount equal to your charisma score. Yes, so basically you're showing off and doing a bit more damage. Slice, damage an enemy within 5 feet equal to your dex modifier. Drag means you move 5 feet away from your target and then move your target with you. So it's kind of the opposite of push. Push pushes them away. Drag means you're bringing them with you. Lunge, increase the reach on your next attack by 5 feet. Wound, the target has to make a con save, and if they fail it, your next attack against them, you count as rolling maximum on your weapon damage dice. So not any other damage dice, just the weapon damage dice. So a bit of extra damage. Parry, this is an ongoing effect, single use only. Add your proficiency bonus to your armor class for the next attack made against you. Ranging, this is for ranged attacks. If you miss, you can go, oh, that was a ranging shot, and the next attack you make, anything within 15 feet of that target, counts at short range. So if you're trying to shoot something at long range, you've got that disadvantage, and you miss, you go, that was a ranging shot, I don't get disadvantage on the next attack, as long as it's close to that target. Fluster. Target does not cause disadvantage on the next attack if it is ranged or thrown. I thought this would be a nice attack. So basically you attack a target and you fluster them somehow with your attack, sort of causing a little bit of panic, and that gives you a chance to make a ranged attack and they don't give you disadvantage for it. This would be particularly good if you've got a net, because nets have only got a 5-foot range and they're a thrown attack. So you always get disadvantage when you use a net because your target is within 5 feet of you. So if you fluster your target, you can then throw a net at them without disadvantage. So fluster, useful little weapon mastery. Anyway, that's 35 of them. I'm sure I'm going to think up of more at some point. But my next task is to remake the Dungeons & Dragons weapon list and decide which weapons get which masteries. My plan is that simple weapons should have 3 or 4 weapon masteries that apply to them, and martial weapons should probably get 5 or 6. But I kind of want it so that you want to have a diversity of weapons. So there's always going to be a case of, well, against this target, this weapon will give me the best weapon mastery abilities, but against that target, I'll use a different weapon because it allows me to access different weapon masteries. And so you're not in a situation where you want to use the same weapon every single turn because your weapon masteries are optimized for different weapons against different targets. So this makes combat a little bit more dynamic. There's still an awful lot of work to do for this, but it's fun. I'm enjoying doing it, and I'm enjoying talking about it. So if you've made it through this is over half an hour already. Well done. What I'd like to know is what you think of those weapon mastery abilities. Is there anything that I've missed that you'd really like to see in there? I think I'd like probably a few more ranged ones, a few more that are specialized for improvised weapons, because I just love the idea of beating people up with battlefield scenery, and probably a few more that seem to fit with unarmed attacks, both for fighters and monks, really. But I'm sure I'll think of a few more as I go along, but this is what I've got so far. So feedback always greatly welcomed. Thank you for coming along with the ride, and enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.